2025 is back and off to the races, and for some reason, you're still listening to this podcast, and we're grateful for it. I'm just kidding. We love you guys. We're glad to have you back for another episode of Walk-Ins Welcome, where we're always here to help you get more patients, deliver better care, get repeat visits, and scale your clinics. Michael, we got an awesome guest today.
We do.
What is up, my friend? How are you?
Man, this year's already been rocking right along. We had a great interview last week. That was fantastic on how to start your urgent care. This week, we actually have somebody that's been in this world for a long time.
She's also like a friend of ours. We've known Patrice from like different channels, not just what we're talking about today.
Yeah, so Patrice Pash, like MASH, that's how she explained it to me. She's been in the world for 20 plus years. She started out as a paramedic firefighter, made her way into the urgent care space. She's currently with a company called UrgentIQ, which we'll talk about in a bit. But at the end of the day, like, if you want to know anything about this industry, she's the one to go to. I first actually was introduced to, I don't know if you remember this, Patrice, it was through Dr. Junkins over a year ago. And so like we've been conversating for a long time. And then your role had changed from where you were when we first started chatting. And so then it became an opportunity to bring you on the show. So glad to have you on.
Welcome to the show, Patrice. Say hello to the audience and tell us one thing about you that nobody else knows.
Hello, world. Okay, the one thing that people don't know about me, I can't say definitively that no one knows this because there's obviously people that do. I write fiction, fan fiction a little bit, but I write fiction mostly for my own enjoyment, but it's been published. It's under a pseudonym. Awesome. I'll kind of keep that on the download for right now. So yeah. But yeah,
well, just as a caveat to that, I was a big fan of Calvin and Hobbes, the cartoon strip. And there was a fan fiction that got put out for it's end of life. So like Calvin is the thing. Hobbes is on his deathbed, right?
Sure.
Anyway, it picks up there. It's a tearjerker. If you love the cartoon strip, it'll mess you up. It'll wreck you. But it's fan fiction to where the writer came out and said, this is it. This is how I would have ended it if I'd written it.
This is how I would have done it. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I kind of got into the sort of creative writing realm even way back. I think I can remember back like when I was even in high school. I had a really good friend of mine, Brian, at the time. We'd ride the bus together and we would write fiction, one part off of another. I'd write a part, he'd write a part, we put it all together. I still have it. It's really funny to look back at because, you can see how you've matured not only as a person, but as a writer. But I love the idea of fan fiction. I know sometimes serious writers, poo-poo it a little because they think it's, I don't know, somehow you're not getting published or whatever. But it's interesting sometimes to read how people will look at a particular genre or a popular movie, popular TV show, popular book, whatever, and then start putting their spin on it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of times I read it and I'm just like, that's garbage. But there's a lot of other times I read it and I'm like, wow, like, gosh, I wish it would have went that way instead. So I think there's a lot of fun and creativity in that. So anyway,
my wife was again. We'll go down this rabbit hole. My wife reads, let's just say, fun adult books. I'll just say it that way. Okay, she likes
the ones you get to check out at grocery store.
The ones that probably you don't get at a grocery store. She's I got her the little bookmark with Jesus hanging around the corner going, what are you reading? So anyway, I bring that up because we were talking about the fan fiction and eventually we'll get around to this episode. But there is a new fan fiction that's a romance novel of Harry Potter and Hermione, or Harry and Draco.
Oh, yeah.
So it's Hermione and Draco down this other path. Anyway, this has nothing to do with urgent cares.
No, but I totally know what you're talking about. And there's some people that just keep it, like, they stay very true to the genre. And then there's other people that, like, again, it's their creativity of, like, people they want to see paired up or situations they want to see happen. And it can go pretty wild and extreme. Most of the stuff that I'm relatively tame, although I will say I'm probably a kindred spirit with your wife. I'll just leave it at that.
No, that's okay.
I will say at this point, let's test our audience. Send us an email, hello@patientcaremarketpros.com. It says Harry Potter, and let's see how many of those we get to come through.
You have to be careful what you wish for. It's that Google rabbit hole. You start Googling something, and then all of a sudden you're like, how in the world did I get to this website?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
But this is the wild wizarding world of urgent care. And Patrice is our headmaster. So
There
let's
you
just
go.
start with
oh
that.
my
So,
goodness. I don't know about
Patrice,
that,
you've got 20 plus years in the industry.
I
But
do.
before that, you've got a story. Okay. And I want to hear, just take a few minutes and tell us your story leading up to urgent care.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting, and I don't really think it's terribly unique necessarily, especially as I've worked in the urgent care industry and done a lot of startups, and I talk with a lot of other, physicians and clinicians and so forth. But I was in college, and I was actually studying pre-med biophysics type of thing, and becoming an EMT paramedic was like, it was a job at the time. I worked on the side. It started with a private ambulance company, and then I ended up going down and working for a municipality in Miami. But it was a great way to learn my trade, because I thought I was going to be a doctor, or more into the research part of it. But yeah, it was just great exposure. And then, quite honestly, I became an adrenaline junkie, seriously, which I think a lot of the folks that get into some of those professions do. And I loved it. But then you also kind of wake up one day after, especially too, and I'm going to completely date myself here, but I was a paramedic firefighter down in Miami, Metro-Dade, in like the late 80s, early 90s. So,
Nice.
those of us that are old enough to kind of remember Miami Vice.
I'm about to say,
episodes-
is this the Miami Vice episode?
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah. I mean, a lot of that was very true, and so a lot of the calls we would run and so forth were drug related. They were just
powdered
just
noses.
violence of some sort related to them. Not all, but anyway, you kind of just wake up one day after about 10 years, and you're like, wow, I'm getting older and frail and whatever you want to say, and I need to have a career change. And so the obvious career change, I think, for me and was going into nursing. And there were actually 4 or 5 of us that were paramedic firefighters in my nursing class. And the beauty of it, retrospectively, was having been a paramedic firefighter, going through nursing school was like almost a cakewalk in a way. I already knew a lot of the pharmacology. I already knew a lot of the pathophysiology and so forth. And then when we actually got in clinically, I already knew how to start IVs and do all that kind of stuff. And so then coming out of that, naturally, what the next choices were was to like work in more of an ER setting, because that was home. I kind of went a little bit from that to working in ICU, CCU, because I love cardiology. That's always been a bit of my passion behind the scenes. And even after that, I think I had, maybe I'm like about 10, 15 years into it at this point. And I want to try to say this where it doesn't sound completely callous, but I think other folks that work in healthcare for a long period of time will understand where I'm coming from. But you get burned out, and you don't care about the patients as much as you used to. You're not, it's just bodies going past you, and it's just work and what have you. And I was literally probably about that close from getting out of it altogether. And I had a wonderful friend of mine that we went through nursing school together. She worked for Physicians Immediate Care, huge chain. I think probably people know it, up in Northern Illinois. And yeah, like sort of the rest, as they say, is history. She brought me over. I knew some of the physicians. I had worked with them like out of the ER and what have you that were owners at the time. And I got into urgent care kind of at its ground floor. And then, just natural progression. You work clinically, and then pretty soon you're like the shift leader or the clinic coordinator, and then you're the manager, and then you're this, and you're that, and the next thing. And it was a pretty logical progression. One of the sort of side things that I went off into, thanks to some of the wonderful physicians and owners at Physicians Immediate Care, was, we got into consulting. This is right about the time that Urgent Care Association, used to be UCAOA, started up, for those of you that remember that. And so we were doing consulting, and we were assisting other interested providers and groups and so forth, and starting up their urgent care. And so then I sort of made the trajectory into that realm, learned a lot from a lot of people, and then learned a lot along the way. And so that's kind of where I've been, but I've had a lot of hats. I've worked in management, I've worked in clinical, and I mean, you name it, a little bit of everything in the urgent care realm.
So how much change has occurred from when you first started in the industry to where it is today? And give me just maybe one example of the most radical change you've seen.
Well, I mean, I use this all the time, this example, somewhat tongue in cheek, but like, I remember the days in urgent care, what's like, we have a fax. So, how far have we come from those days to now where we're talking about, especially in the realm I'm in now with UrgentIQ, we're talking like AI technology and so much automation and, computer generated this and OCR technology and all these different things that I think back in the early days of my career period. I mean, literally, I go back far enough of being a paramedic firefighter where like we didn't wear gloves. We didn't wear PPE. It wasn't mandated, a lot of things. So I've seen a ton of changes through medicine in particular, but urgent care, and I think this is why I love urgent care, if I'm being brutally honest, is that out of a lot of the different segments of medicine, urgent care has been able over the years to just keep adapting and changing. And we saw it way back in the days, because again, I remember the days where, people would say, oh, it's doc in a box. And I can think of all the other euphemisms.
I remember the doc in the box days.
Oh yeah.
I was around for the doc in the box days.
Yeah. Cause it was like the joke. If you want to get bad care, go to the doc in the box.
How desperate are you? That was kind of the philosophy. Like, how desperate are you to go get seen right now instead of go to the ER? And again, I think it was the intelligence and the vision of providers, and I'm going to name drop just a little bit here, but like Dr. John Kaler, Dr. Terry Buzzard, Dr. David Stern. I mean, these are names that everyone finds synonymous with urgent care, but they really transformed that by saying you can come and have excellent immediate care and be treated well and get really good care. It wasn't, like, oh, this is the guy who couldn't pass med school or something that's like treating you today. So, so that was kind of the beginning of some of the change. But then you just even fast forward, go back to the COVID-19, 2020, 2021, what have you. And when all of the hospitals were just floundering and private practices were shuttering, urgent care was like, okay, how can we make this happen? Because we're just not going to shut down. A lot of private owned urgent cares. These are owner operators that, they have to see patients because that's what's, putting food on the table, paying their staff, the whole 9 yards, plus their commitment to their community. And they figured it out. And, you would hear stories of, we did a drive-through, or we set up this like triaging, or, we rented out a little empty building and we'd funnel people this way. So urgent care is just so incredibly adaptive. And we see that even now. I mentioned here just a moment ago, like we're seeing the increased utilization and demand for AI technology. Again, just adapting to what's out there in the times and how it can better serve their patients. Ultimately, the patient's the key thing.
That's a lot to digest, which I love. So let's transition over to UrgentIQ a little bit. It's funny. We were, this is a terrible transition, but I'm going to say it nonetheless. So we were meeting with another client of ours, and they had the most clunky, outdated, disgusting system. Like even down to the point where they were still keeping paper files.
Sure.
And they were trying to transition this over to some kind of like a weird database on, I'm going somewhere with this. We've also seen other softwares where it's some of the cleanest and most beautiful looking software you've ever seen. And it's a paperweight. It's a digital paperweight. It does nothing well. It's clunky, but it looks amazing. It's lipstick on a pig, right? And doesn't do anything that you want it to do. And then maybe I want to say 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago, we ran into the founder of UrgentIQ.
It would have been 2 years this coming April.
Okay, 2 years.
Because it was at the UCA event the first time we went.
Yeah, that's about the right timeline for us.
Yeah.
And he had just rolled it out because he had come from a different world, and he saw the need. And so we brought him on too.
Right, it was a good interview.
Early on the podcast. This is probably like episode like 30 something. But anyway, so this. I mean, from our standpoint, this product's been developing now for 2+ years. Like it's not a brand new to the scene type thing anymore. So,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say, no, I think we're new, but yet not new. It's that we're getting into that sort of weird space where, people are starting to hear about us and know about us. We're by no means like on the tip of everyone's tongue, like say Epic or whomever, which, how can you compete with that in a way? But I think going back to the comment that you made, I think, everyone has this idea. And it's very interesting because I've been on sort of both sides of this coin as a user and now on more of the technology side of it. And, everyone thinks they can build, a better burger. And at the end of the day, it's just still a burger. You can cook it well, you can add pieces to it, you can, frilly it all up. But, you have to start with that burger. It's got to be good quality beef and, whatever, and go on from there. And so I think that's a little bit of what we see, not just in, EMR technology, but just, across the board in so many different facets of patient care. For UrgentIQ in particular, if you ask me the question, well, what sets us apart? I think we have a really dedicated team that, again, has been on both sides of this. And we're really striving to make the EMR make sense, be usable, not only be fast, because that's what everyone wants. I want to be able to document fast and, and capture everything, get my best coding. And that certainly is a part of it. But to your point, like, it can't be clunky. It can look really pretty, but it can't be clunky.
Right.
And you want to also as well be agile. So I think when you talk to people who've worked in other systems, and I'm by no means knocking them, but, it's kind of like, here's what you get. Out of the box, here's what you get. Don't ask for nothing else because we're not going to change it, or we can't change it. Sometimes it's we can't change it. And so I think for us, we're really striving to be able to meet our customers' wants and needs, even though they may all be in urgent care. There's different versions of what they do, different services they offer, different workflows. So I think we started with a really strong workflow, and is how we created the EMR. And now we just continue to keep up with the trends and augment it and make sure that it's still just as intuitive as possible. And we use that word a lot, but it's very true. We want this to be intuitive to providers. We don't want providers or MAs or front desk people or whatever have to come in and go, what in the world do I have to do here? Type of thing.
Right.
So,
yeah, it's like organically or naturally, you just kind of know where to point the clicker or touch the interface. And
to me, it reminds me of what was the point of sale software that came out of nowhere that not everybody comes
Toast.
Toast
Is fantastic.
It's like when Toast rolled out, and then now there's no question how, like, you just now the waitress or waiter just hands you the device and like, here, you can take care of it.
I mean, at this point in my life, I'm a little irritated when I don't get it.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
like, why do you have to walk away with my credit card?
Yeah,
why can't I just pay you right now?
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, and I think that's a commentary again on urgent care, and then sort of this ancillary, like where we are in the EMR marketplace specifically for urgent care is, society changes. I mean, again, I'm going to go on a limb here. We're all probably close to the same age. We didn't grow up with 10,000 channels and on demand, this or that or the next thing. I mean, heck, I grew up where you still had to actually send a letter to somebody. So, but and as things change and as society changes and technology changes society, and conversely, society changes technology, you're in a very competitive market where, there's a lot of folks who have these great ideas. Some of them are able to execute, some of them execute well, some of them don't. But again, just trying to keep up with where things are going, being predictive, being, a visionary and so forth. And I think that's what we strongly try to do. But it's a tough task, to be honest. And the longer you're around, the tougher I think it is to keep up with that vision and up with what people want and need, what providers need, what, front desk needs, and having that entire package and it all be good. It all be functional, not just one part that's great, but all of it is great.
So I think, because a lot of times innovation comes out of something drastic has happened or needs to happen. So an innovation needs to occur. So I believe a good chunk of like AI came around, right? And then we all know medical is very slow to adopt new things coming down the pipeline. We fully recognize that when we went to an event just a few months ago, and they were all urgent cares, and basically no one in the room had to raise their hand related to have they used AI yet. They were afraid to. And I totally get that. But I look at it this way. I feel like UrgentIQ, all the softwares out there that are there to, improve things, make things more efficient, at the end of the day, and just ultimately make things more profitable. Because as we keep hearing over and over and over again, the costs go up to run an urgent care, but the revenue coming in doesn't really change.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, it's about efficiency. Like if I'm going to get $200 out of a patient, but only, get $15 at the end of the day from them, I got to maximize that $15, see if I can get to $16 or $17, because it's all volume based at this point.
Got to squeeze that nickel to the buffalo.
You really, from an urgent care operation standpoint, and I think this has been the case since day one, and you're right, absolutely right. Costs go up and revenue goes down every year, it never changes. But yeah, learning how to run mean and lean, like you're not going to go into urgent care and think you're going to come out of it like you're, running a specialty dermatology group or some type of really special specific cardiology group or something like that, where the money just rolls in. But, and you can do that with seeing 5 patients a day sort of thing. In urgent care, there's some very definitive, break even points. And that break even point doesn't change a ton for most urgent cares, but that's where I think the creativity and the ownership or the management has to sit back and just say, okay, we're going to just, turn that dial, even if it's just a tiny little fraction, and reap the benefit of it. And I think that comes in a lot of ways. I think there'd be a lot of people that would be out there and just say like, well, you know what, or, EMRs or EMRs doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go with like the one that's the most affordable. And there is a component of you get what you pay for, but conversely, there's also that component that you're paying too much for something that you're not getting anything out of. And somewhere in the middle of that is the sweet spot of I'm not paying a ton, but man, I am really getting the most bang for the buck. And I think that's kind of our goal here. If I had to, really wrap it up at UrgentIQ, we have tons of goals. I mean, like we want to be supportive. We sort of pride ourselves on our support team and our responsiveness and so forth. And we want to be visionary and, we want to give them all the technology we want. But at the end of the day, we want to help them be successful. And it may sound a little corny, but like, again, it's that whole thing. If our customers aren't successful, if our urgent care owners and operators and providers and so on, and all the way down the line to the, most basic person that's in that clinic, if they're not happy and successful, we're not going to be happy and successful very long as a vendor. So
yeah, we're in the exact same boat. Like if our clients, our urgent care clients aren't getting the patients that they need to be successful, we're going to feel the pain too. And we don't want that for them at the end of the day. Because, when we first started moving into the urgent care space, 20, 25 patients per day was like a break even point. It felt like now it's like 30, 35 patients is starting to become the break even point. Because we used to be like, hey, yeah, if we get you to 40 patients, you're printing money. And now it's like, we got to get you to 50 patients to print money now.
Sure.
And it's just, I don't see it slowing down at all.
No, and it's interesting. Like I wrote a blog post here a week or two ago about, just like what's really going on in 2025 for healthcare. And the irony of that blog post is like, if you read it, whatever, there are 5 or 6 points that I make. And really, honestly, nothing was new there. Maybe the commentary about the AI and the continued increase in use of AI was like a little bit newer, but when you look at things like staffing shortages, so many of these urgent cares are really struggling to find staff. It's such an employee's market, I guess you want to say. It's like there's so many options for nurses to go here, MAs to go there, providers to go here, there, whatever, and make money because the demand is high. That when you're running that really tight margin and you've got this provider's like, well, you know what, I can be a PA in urgent care and go be PNA in the ER and make like 3 times as much money and probably work less shifts or something like that. That's a really tough nut to crack. And then, on top of that, utilization is not going down. We still have, our population is getting bigger and older, longer, the baby boomers and the Gen Xers and all those guys that the generation before us, the average lifespan was maybe to 70. And now we're looking at 75 and 80 and 90. And then you throw on top of that, there's just so much chronic illness out there, and and lop on top of that our on-demand society. Who wants to wait for anything? If you have to wait more than X amount of minutes, you like walk out the door and you go somewhere else. So it does make it hard for urgent cares. And I won't even, there's no point in even beating the sort of dead horse here on just how reimbursements are going, because they never go up. I mean, once in a while you get lucky as an urgent care operator and you can get a few percentage points out of one of the payers, but for the most part, it doesn't rise in the same percentage as your costs do. So, yeah, it's, again, I don't think any of this is really like earth-shattering news to anyone that's really in the industry, and even beyond the urgent care industry and private practice, primary care, what have you. They're fighting the same battles. It's tough. And so I think myself personally, I really strive that I want to see the folks that I work with be successful. And, it's a little bit of ethics and a lot of pride and what have you, and whatever it takes to help them in any way I can, to find those vendors or those tools or those, information, whatever the case is. I think it's just that's what we do. So, yeah. Anyway.
Well, let's talk UrgentIQ for just a second and talk about the actual software itself. We know it's an EMR, but knowing that you guys have incorporated AI and you've incorporated OCR technology. Yep. So let's talk about, a minute ago, you made the comment that it's a hamburger. It's just like, what kind of hamburger you put? Is this a fancy gourmet hamburger? Is this a Red Robin hamburger where they're gonna go? Is this is this a Burger King Whopper, have it your way burger?
Better not be McDonald's.
Is this a McDonald's number one's the number one? You're gonna get what you're gonna get, that kind of thing. Like, explain the hamburger software to us.
Or is it the Chick-fil-A of hamburgers?
That's right, which is all service and there's no hamburger in there at all.
Those are such interesting analogies because when I mentioned before, it's like in that burger analogy, it's like you can put anything you want on it, but like you still got to start with really good, high quality meat. And all of us have been, at the end of the day, I'd still rather go buy my ground beef from a butcher shop somewhere and make my own burgers. But, then there comes speed and everything else, because this is why we end up at places like McDonald's and what have you. But, you don't want to end up, and to keep that analogy going here ridiculously, like we don't want to be the impossible burger. The sort of like imposter burger.
You may want to be that.
Maybe, I don't know. I mean,
the unwitch.
There's probably some allegory to that as well. But no, UrgentIQ, again, we really have gone into this, and I think we're very fortunate that we have great advisors and we have a team. Honestly, I think it starts with a team. Again, going back to that start with the best beef analogy. We started with just some phenomenal people that just knew the industry on one side or the other. They knew the technology part of it, or they knew the operational part of it. And when you can put that kind of brain trust together, amazing things happen. And then we have a wonderful CEO in that just can kind of keep all the balls juggling in the air and drive us in the right direction, and a lot of other folks that are, pushing us in the right direction. But again, at the end of the day, it's still staying in touch with what the industry wants and the customers. And so we've done that. We've tried to create a software that right from the get-go just is simple to use. Again, I hate to keep saying the word intuitive, but like it just makes sense when you're working in that industry to be able to go like, hey, all my information is right here on this dashboard, and I can very easily get to anything I need with that patient's chart, whether it's billing information, demographic information, past medical history information, just whatever the case is. So we started with that. And now I feel like everything that we keep putting layers on is the cheese and the lettuce and the tomatoes and what have you, where, employing conversational AI, employing AI coding, the OCR technology that you mentioned, trying to put some focus on things like occupational medicine so that we can capture the right data on the front end. So again, it goes out on a clean claim on the back end. These are all things that we're trying to stay just very attuned to in the urgent care industry. And then our software is reflective of that. And again, if we feel like if somebody comes to us, one of our customers comes and said, hey, you guys made a left turn here, then I think one things that we pride ourselves on is that we're agile enough to say, okay, we'll course correct and, come back another way. And sometimes it's not turning the aircraft carrier. It's just, or on the right side instead of the left side kind of thing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to turn a boat that's the size of an aircraft carrier, but
it is.
Those wave runners turn quick.
Yeah, and I think you see that, and again, by no means I'm not discrediting any of the other EMRs out there, but you look at the really big EMRs, and that's what it is. It's like trying to turn an aircraft carrier. They have so many users, so many features that are already built in structurally that to make one little change, like just upsets the apple cart all the way around. And I think we've approached this to where we can make a lot of changes and, again, not get into that whole, we have to like destroy the software to recreate the software. We can make changes at a very basic or a very granular level or a major level and do that without disrupting people or without destroying our software.
All right. So let me ask the biggest question, and that is, how much of a challenge is it to transition from current EMR to your EMR? If somebody isn't in a startup mode, they already have an existing
question. And I think, and I will tell you honestly, I've been on that side of it where there is just so much deep-seated fear, I think, sometimes on changing a big software. And I don't care what industry you're in. I mean, it could be something like, you're like, oh, we're going to go from Salesforce to, something else, and people just freak out about it. First of all, people hate change. They get very comfortable, and the longer you've been on whatever application, the harder it is to get people to see that, this change is a good thing. So that we spend time speaking with customers that want to make a switch or what have you. And I think calming a lot of nerves and giving them a really cohesive change/onboarding plan. Like, we got you. We're in control of this. You have the people here that have done this on the technology side and on the operational side. We know what you're going to face. We can help you get through that and what have you. But at the brass tacks of it, it's really super easy to switch over to another EMR, to switch over to our EMR in particular. Again, because we do facilitate it so well, but also having those conversations and just saying, like, look, once you get past the conversation of, what impact is it going to have on your AR, then the other stuff is, okay, now what impact is it going to have on your operations? And those should outweigh each other. In other words, yeah, it's going to have an impact on your AR because you're going to have a little bit of lag there during the switch, or there's going to be some things in the old EMR, some things in the new EMR. But the real power of this is, what are you going to gain out of making this switch? Well, okay, if you cut a few minutes, let's say 5 minutes off of your provider's documentation time by switching, do the math. If a provider's seeing 40, 45 patients a day and you're saving him 5 minutes on every one, and this provider isn't, he's locking charts faster. So that means claims are pushing faster. He's, completing them. He's not having to go, she not going to have to go home and be like, yeah, I'm going to spend my off day tomorrow finishing my charts from this day. Those are the kinds of things that they do have a tangible value to them. And that's what sometimes you have to sit down with a prospective customer and say, okay, here's where your pain points are now. By switching to UrgentIQ, here's where we can make some of those pain points go away or improve. And here's here's how we can quantify that for you monetarily, quantify that.
So it's like time frame wise, if I was an urgent care, a single location urgent care that does like 50 patients per day, what is the actual time it would take? It's like, okay, yes, UrgentIQ, let's hit the go button. How long is that transition to where we're fully functional in your system, and then we look at the other system and we're done?
I'm going to give you the average and say it's like 4 to 6 weeks, but truth in fact, we've onboarded people in like 1 or 2 weeks. Obviously, there's some things that have to go the right way. Sure. We have to be able to get some of the information and set things up and what have you. And we have to get the training done. The training is actually probably the easiest part. We have a little insider's joke that sort of says that if we have to spend too much time training you, then our software is not as simple as we
absolutely
promise it's going to be. So there's a little bit of that. But again, I would say conservatively, let's just say 6 weeks. But honestly, I think they get done much faster. Now, again, you use the example of one urgent care. Obviously, that changes when you have 10, 15, 20. We certainly work with customers like that. And obviously, there's more people to train, there's rollouts, but we facilitate that as well to, give you a game plan of how it's going to be easier to roll it out to like 20 units versus just one little contained unit.
Nice.
Yeah. You guys have a demo on the website. If you go to urgentiq.com, you can click on the demo button and you'll get a chance to schedule a call. I'm assuming with somebody on your team, maybe even you, I don't know, but
we do. Myself, Megan Brower, who is our vice president of product. It's usually one of the two of us. Nat usually sits in as well, but we have plenty of folks that will and can demo, and we'd love to be able to have conversations with folks and see what we can do at UrgentIQ to make their operations improved, be more efficient, and ultimately best serve their patients.
Love it.
Yeah.
Patrice, thank you for coming on the show today.
absolutely.
We're going to
Pleasure.
drop
Thank you
your
for
information. We're going to drop your information in the show notes, your LinkedIn profile, and a link for a demo for UrgentIQ. It's awesome to get a chance to finally have you on the podcast. I know we've talked about UrgentIQ before, but we haven't had Patrice on before.
Yeah, exactly.
And y'all, she is a whole vibe in and of herself.
Like
So-
anytime I send her an email with a question, there's always a good answer that comes right back. So
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah,
Now, I don't want you to
try.
schedule a demo just to hang out with Patrice,
there you go.
but it's probably going to be worth it if you do.
Yeah.
Well,
Love
and I mean, again, we love doing demos, and we definitely are in the business here to sell UrgentIQ. But at the same token, we're also in the business to just help people work better. And so there's a lot of our conversations, and certainly folks are welcome to do this. If you have a question on the operational side of things, or the financial side of things, or just anything basically to do with urgent care, we have the brain power to be able to answer you. And so we welcome that at any point in time. We like having those urgent care conversations, regardless of what they're for. Hopefully they're for people coming to UrgentIQ, but
There you go.
There you go. That's the important thing.
absolutely.
Patrice, thank you so much for being on the
thank you.
podcast with us. Hopefully we'll get a chance to have you on again in the near future.
It
Until
would be my
then,
pleasure.
y'all go out, y'all crush it. Have a great week. What you do matters. We'll see you next Wednesday on Walk-Ins Welcome.
Thanks, gentlemen.
See ya.